Maya Johnson pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway of the 62nd floor of the Meridian Tower. The wheels squeaked softly against the polished stone as she made her way toward the corner office suite. At 24, she had been working as part of the overnight cleaning crew for almost 2 years now. The pay was decent, and, more importantly, it allowed her to attend college during the day. The hallway was lined with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city below. Even at 11:30 at night, the streets sparkled with lights like scattered diamonds. Maya paused for a moment to look out at the view. She never got tired of seeing the city from this height. It reminded her of why she was working so hard. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her roommate asking if she would be home before morning. Maya quickly typed back that she would finish around 6 a.m. as usual. She needed to focus. The executive floors required extra attention to detail, and she could not afford to lose this job. Maya had learned to clean efficiently and quietly. The business world operated on different schedules, and sometimes executives worked late into the night. She had developed a system that allowed her to clean thoroughly while staying invisible to the important people who worked in these offices. As she approached the largest corner office, she could see lights were still on inside. The nameplate on the door read, Vikram Mehta, Chief Executive Officer. Maya had cleaned his office many times, but she had never actually seen him. According to the other cleaning staff, he was one of those billionaires who worked around the clock building his empire. Maya knocked softly on the door and waited. When no one answered, she used her keycard to enter. The office was enormous, with a sitting area, a conference table, and a massive desk that faced the windows. The decor was modern but warm, with expensive-looking artwork on the walls and real plants in large ceramic pots. She began her routine, starting with emptying the trash bins and replacing the liners. As she worked, she could hear voices coming from the smaller conference room that connected to the main office. The door was slightly open, and warm light spilled out into the darkened office space. Maya continued cleaning, being extra careful to work quietly. She dusted the bookshelves, wiped down the coffee table, and vacuumed the sitting area. As she moved closer to the conference room, the voices became clearer. She could hear at least 2 people having what sounded like an intense conversation. She was about to move to a different part of the office when she heard something that made her freeze. One of the voices was speaking in Hindi. Maya recognized the language immediately because she had studied it extensively during her undergraduate degree in international business. Her professor had encouraged students to learn languages that would be valuable in the global marketplace. Maya had always been good with languages. She spoke fluent Spanish because of her neighborhood growing up, and she had picked up Hindi relatively quickly. She found the language beautiful and had even spent a summer studying abroad in India during her sophomore year. The experience had opened her eyes to a completely different culture and way of thinking about business. The conversation in the conference room continued in Hindi, and Maya realized she could understand every word. She tried to focus on her cleaning, but the tone of the conversation was urgent, almost secretive. Her natural curiosity made it difficult to ignore what she was hearing. "We need to move forward with the acquisition before anyone finds out," said the first voice in Hindi. "The board cannot know about the financial problems until after we complete the purchase." Maya's hand froze on the spray bottle she was using to clean the windows. This sounded like something important, something that maybe should not be discussed so openly. She glanced toward the conference room door, wondering who was inside. "Are you sure the numbers will work out?" asked a second voice, also in Hindi. "If this goes wrong, we could lose everything we have built." "Trust me," replied the first voice. "The American investors have no idea what they are selling. They think the company is worthless, but I know better. Once we acquire it, we can turn it around within 6 months. The key is keeping this quiet until the paperwork is signed." Maya continued cleaning, but her mind was racing. She was hearing what sounded like confidential business information. The ethical part of her knew she should leave immediately, but another part of her was fascinated by getting a glimpse into how major business deals actually worked. She had read about acquisitions and mergers in her business classes, but hearing it discussed in real time was completely different. The stakes seemed enormous, and the secrecy suggested that millions or maybe billions of dollars were involved. "What about the employees?" asked the second voice. There are thousands of people who will lose their jobs if we cannot turn the company around quickly. That is not our problem right now, replied the first voice sharply. We have to focus on the acquisition first. We can worry about the human resources issues later. The important thing is getting control of the technology and the patents. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. These men were talking about thousands of people's livelihoods as if they were just numbers on a spreadsheet. She thought about her own job and how devastating it would be if she suddenly lost her income. Without this job, she would not be able to finish college or help support her mother. She moved quietly to the next section of the office, trying to process what she had overheard. The conversation continued in Hindi, with the two voices discussing financial projections, legal strategies, and timeline details. Maya found herself understanding more of the business terminology than she had expected, thanks to her business classes. The legal team has prepared all the necessary documents, said the first voice. We just need to make sure that none of this information leaks before we are ready to announce. If our competitors find out what we are planning, they could interfere with the deal. What about your assistant? Asked the second voice. She handles all your correspondence and scheduling. How do we know she will not accidentally reveal something? Priya is completely trustworthy, replied the first voice. Besides, I only discuss the most sensitive details in Hindi. She speaks only English, so there is no risk of her understanding anything important. Maya realized that the first voice must belong to Vikram Mehta himself. She was cleaning the office of one of the most powerful businessmen in the country, and he was having confidential conversations just a few feet away from her. The irony was not lost on her that he felt safe speaking Hindi because he assumed no one around him would understand. She finished dusting the last bookshelf and moved toward the area near the conference room to clean the coffee station. As she got closer, she could see through the crack in the door. Two men in expensive suits were sitting at a small table covered with documents and laptops. One was younger, probably in his 30s, with perfectly styled black hair. The other was older, maybe in his 50s, with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses. We should finalize everything by next Friday, said the younger man in Hindi. Maya assumed this was Vikram Mehta. That gives us enough time to complete the due diligence without raising suspicions. And you are confident that the American company has no idea about the real value of their intellectual property? Asked the older man. Completely confident, replied Vikram. They developed some revolutionary software for data analysis, but they have no idea how to monetize it properly. They are struggling financially because they focus too much on the technical aspects and not enough on the business side. Maya carefully wiped down the coffee maker, trying to appear completely absorbed in her work. She was learning details about what sounded like a major business deal that could affect thousands of people. The software company they were discussing sounded like it might be based in the United States, which meant American workers could be affected. Once we acquire the company, we can integrate their technology with our existing platforms, continued Vikram in Hindi. The synergies will be incredible. We estimate that the combined value will be at least 10 times what we are paying for the acquisition. The older man leaned back in his chair. That sounds almost too good to be true. Are you certain there are no hidden problems with the company? I have had our best analysts reviewing everything for months, replied Vikram. The only reason the company is available at such a low price is because they are desperate for cash flow. Their management team made some poor decisions about expansion, and now they need to sell quickly to avoid bankruptcy. Maya finished cleaning the coffee area and moved to organize the magazines and documents on the nearby table. She could not help but think about the employees of the company being discussed. They probably had no idea that their jobs hung in the balance while these two men made calculations about profit margins and market synergies. What about regulatory approval? Asked the older man. Surely the government agencies will review a deal of this size. We have already consulted with our legal team about that, replied Vikram. Because the target company is relatively small compared to our overall business, and because it operates in a different sector, we do not expect any significant regulatory challenges. The deal should go through without problems. Maya glanced at her watch and realized she had been in the office for almost an hour. She still needed to clean the main bathroom and organize Vikram's desk area. She tried to work more quickly while still being thorough. The last thing she needed was a complaint about her cleaning quality. As she moved closer to the desk, She noticed several documents spread across the surface. Most were in English, and she could see terms like acquisition agreement and financial projections on the visible pages. There were also several documents that appeared to be in Hindi script, which she could not read. "We should probably wrap up for tonight," said Vikram in Hindi. "I have an early meeting tomorrow with the board of directors. Of course, I will not be discussing any of this with them yet." "When do you plan to inform the board about the acquisition?" asked the older man. "Not until after we have signed the preliminary agreement," replied Vikram. "I want to present it to them as a completed deal rather than a proposal. It will be easier to get their approval if they see it as a strategic accomplishment rather than a risky investment." Maya realized the conversation was winding down, which meant the men would probably be leaving soon. She needed to finish cleaning and get out of the office before they emerged from the conference room. The last thing she wanted was an awkward encounter where she had to pretend she had not overheard anything. She quickly wiped down Vikram's desk, being careful not to disturb any of the documents. As she worked, she noticed a framed photograph showing Vikram with several other people at what looked like a charity event. He appeared younger in the photo and was smiling broadly while shaking hands with someone Maya did not recognize. "I think we have covered everything for tonight," said Vikram in Hindi. "Let us meet again on Wednesday to review the final details." "Agreed," replied the older man. "And remember, absolute secrecy until we are ready to announce." Too many deals have failed because information leaked at the wrong time. Maya heard chairs moving in the conference room and realized the men were preparing to leave. She quickly gathered her cleaning supplies and pushed her cart toward the office door. She needed to exit gracefully without appearing to rush or act suspiciously. As she reached the door, she heard footsteps approaching from the conference room. Maya opened the office door and began pushing her cart into the hallway, moving at a normal pace. Just as she cleared the doorway, she heard the conference room door open fully behind her. "Good night, and thank you for staying so late," she heard Vikram say in English, presumably to his guest. "The pleasure was mine," replied the older man, also switching to English. "I look forward to our next meeting." Maya continued down the hallway without looking back, but she could feel her heart beating faster. She had just overheard what sounded like highly confidential information about a major business acquisition. The knowledge felt heavy, like a secret she was not supposed to carry. As she moved her cart toward the elevator, Maya tried to process everything she had learned. She thought about the thousands of employees who might be affected by this deal, and about the American company that apparently did not realize the true value of what they were selling. She also thought about Vikram Mehta's assumption that no one around him could understand Hindi. The elevator doors opened, and Maya pushed her cart inside. As the doors closed and the elevator began its descent, she realized that her life had just become much more complicated. She had stumbled onto information that could potentially affect stock prices, job security for thousands of people, and the future of at least 2 companies. Maya stared at her reflection in the polished elevator. Maya spent the next 3 days trying to focus on her normal routine, but the conversation she had overheard kept replaying in her mind. Every time she attended her international business strategy class, she found herself thinking about the acquisition deal Vikram Mehta was planning. The professor discussed case studies about corporate mergers, and Maya realized she had witnessed the planning stages of what could become a major case study itself. On Thursday morning, Maya sat in the university library researching for her term paper when she decided to look up information about Vikram Mehta and his company. She used the library's business database to search for recent news articles and financial reports. What she found made her stomach drop. Meridian Industries, Vikram's company, was even larger than she had realized. The articles described him as a brilliant businessman who had built his empire through strategic acquisitions and innovative technology partnerships. Several articles mentioned his ability to identify undervalued companies and transform them into profitable ventures. Maya found a recent interview where Vikram discussed his business philosophy. "Success in the modern economy requires thinking globally and acting decisively," he had said. "Sometimes the best opportunities are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with vision to recognize their true potential." As she read more, Maya discovered that Meridian Industries had completed several major acquisitions in the past 5 years. In each case, The pattern seemed similar to what she had overheard. Vikram would identify a struggling company with valuable technology or market position, acquire it at a relatively low price, and then restructure it for profitability. What troubled Maya was reading about the human cost of these restructuring efforts. One article detailed how a previous acquisition had resulted in the layoffs of nearly 40% of the acquired company's workforce. The article quoted former employees who described feeling betrayed by promises that their jobs would be secure after the acquisition. Maya closed her laptop and stared out the library window at the campus quad. Students were walking between classes, carrying backpacks, and chatting with friends. Everyone looked so normal, so unaware of the corporate machinations happening in the skyscrapers downtown. She wondered how many of these students would eventually find themselves working for companies that could be bought and sold like commodities. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her supervisor at the cleaning company. There had been a schedule change, and Maya was being asked to work Friday night instead of her usual Thursday shift. The message explained that one of the regular Friday cleaners had called in sick, and they needed Maya to cover the executive floors. Maya stared at the message for a long moment. Friday night was when Vikram had mentioned he would be finalizing the acquisition deal. If she worked that shift, she might overhear more details about the transaction. Part of her wanted to avoid the situation entirely, but another part of her felt a responsibility to learn more about what was happening. She texted back that she could work the Friday shift. As she hit send, Maya realized she was making a choice to become more involved rather than less. She told herself that she just wanted to understand the situation better, but deep down she knew she was hoping to gather information that might somehow help the people who could be affected by the deal. Friday evening arrived with an unusual spring thunderstorm. Maya took the bus downtown through heavy rain, watching the city lights blur through the water-streaked windows. The weather matched her nervous mood as she thought about what she might discover during her shift. When she arrived at Meridian Tower, the building seemed quieter than usual. The security guard at the front desk mentioned that most employees had left early because of the storm. Maya badged through the turnstiles and took the elevator up to the executive floors, wondering if Vikram would even be in the building. As the elevator climbed toward the 62nd floor, Maya rehearsed what she would do if she encountered Vikram or his associates. She would simply focus on her cleaning duties and act as invisible as possible. She had no intention of eavesdropping deliberately, but if conversations happened within earshot, she could not help what she might hear. The elevator doors opened to reveal the familiar marble hallway. Maya collected her cleaning cart from the supply closet and began her route. As she approached Vikram's office, she could see that the lights were on again. Voices could be heard coming from inside, suggesting that the meeting she had heard about was indeed taking place. Maya knocked softly and waited. When no one answered, she used her keycard to enter. The office was arranged differently than it had been earlier in the week. The conference table had been moved to the center of the room, and it was covered with documents, laptops, and what appeared to be legal contracts. 3 men were seated around the table, and Maya recognized Vikram and the older man from the previous meeting. The third person was someone she had not seen before, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit who was typing on a laptop while the others talked. Maya began her cleaning routine, starting with the areas farthest from the conference table. The conversation was taking place in a mixture of English and Hindi, which made it easier for her to follow. She realized that the third man must be a lawyer or financial advisor who did not speak Hindi, which explained why they were switching between languages. "The due diligence report confirms everything we discussed," said the lawyer in English. "Dataflow Technologies has revolutionary software capabilities, but their management team has made critical errors in market positioning and cash flow management." "What is their current financial situation?" asked Vikram in English. "They have approximately 6 weeks of operating capital remaining," replied the lawyer. "After that, they will be forced to declare bankruptcy unless they can secure emergency funding or find a buyer." Maya continued dusting the bookshelves while processing this information. Dataflow Technologies was apparently the name of the company being acquired. 6 weeks seemed like an incredibly short timeline for the employees and stakeholders of that company. The older man leaned forward and switched to Hindi. "Are we certain that Dataflow's board of directors will accept our offer?" "They have no choice," replied Vikram in Hindi. We are offering them a way to avoid bankruptcy and save at least some jobs. They cannot afford to negotiate extensively. What about the software patents? Asked the older man, continuing in Hindi. Those are the real value in this acquisition. The patents alone are worth more than our entire purchase price, replied Vikram. Dataflow's management does not fully understand what they have created. Their software can revolutionize data analysis across multiple industries, but they have been marketing it only to financial services companies. Maya moved closer to the conference area to clean the coffee station. As she worked, she could see some of the documents spread across the table. Many were legal contracts with official-looking headers and signature lines. Others appeared to be financial projections and market analysis reports. Once we complete the acquisition, how quickly can we begin integrating their technology? Asked the lawyer in English. We have already identified the key personnel we want to retain, replied Vikram. The core development team is only 12 people, but they are the ones who created the breakthrough algorithms. We can keep them and restructure everything else. What about the other employees? Asked the older man in Hindi. There are nearly 800 people working for Dataflow. Most of them will not be necessary after the integration, replied Vikram in Hindi. We already have established teams for marketing, sales, administration, and customer service. We only need the technical talent and the intellectual property. Maya felt a knot forming in her stomach. 800 people were about to lose their jobs, and most of them probably had no idea what was coming. She thought about her own precarious financial situation and tried to imagine how devastating it would be to suddenly lose her primary source of income. The conversation continued with detailed discussions about integration timelines, cost savings projections, and market expansion strategies. Maya learned that Meridian Industries planned to use Dataflow software to enhance their existing products and enter new markets in healthcare, manufacturing, and government services. The scalability potential is enormous, said Vikram in English. Dataflow software can analyze patterns in any type of large data set. We can license it to companies across dozens of industries. What are the projected revenue increases? Asked the lawyer. Conservative estimates suggest we can triple our software licensing revenue within 18 months, replied Vikram. More aggressive projections suggest we could see 5-fold growth if we execute the market expansion correctly. Maya moved to clean the windows while listening to these projections. The numbers being discussed were staggering. Vikram was talking about revenue increases that would amount to hundreds of millions of dollars, all built on technology that Dataflow had created but could not properly commercialize. There is one potential complication we should discuss, said the older man in Hindi. Dataflow's employees have been told that any acquisition would preserve their job security. If word gets out about our restructuring plans before the deal closes, it could create problems. That is why we need to maintain absolute confidentiality, replied Vikram in Hindi. The announcement of job cuts will come after the acquisition is legally completed. By then, it will be too late for anyone to interfere with our plans. Maya paused in her cleaning, struck by the calculated nature of this deception. The Dataflow employees were being deliberately misled about their future job security. She wondered if there were families planning major purchases or life decisions based on promises that were intentionally false. What about regulatory scrutiny? Asked the lawyer. Acquisitions that result in significant layoffs sometimes attract attention from labor relations agencies. We have structured the deal to minimize regulatory concerns, replied Vikram. Technically, we are acquiring Dataflow's assets and intellectual property, not the entire company. This allows us to be selective about which employment contracts we choose to honor. The legal maneuvering being described sounded incredibly sophisticated but also somehow morally questionable to Maya. She thought about the business ethics courses she had taken and the principles of fair dealing and transparency that her professors had emphasized. The asset purchase structure also provides tax advantages, added the older man in Hindi. We can write off the acquisition costs more quickly and avoid some of the pension obligations that would come with a traditional merger. Maya finished cleaning the windows and moved to organize the reading area near Vikram's desk. From this position, she could see more of the documents on the conference table. One stack appeared to be employee records from Dataflow, complete with names, positions, and salary information. Have you identified which data flow employees will receive retention offers? Asked the lawyer. We have a list of approximately 60 people whose skills are essential, replied Vikram. Everyone else will receive standard severance packages as required by their employment contracts. How long are the standard severance packages? Asked the older man. Most employees will receive 2 weeks of pay plus any accrued vacation time, replied the lawyer. Senior management will receive slightly more generous packages to ensure their cooperation during the transition. 2 weeks of severance pay seemed woefully inadequate to Maya, especially for employees who might have worked at Dataflow for years. She thought about how long it typically took people to find new jobs in competitive markets, particularly when hundreds of people from the same company would be entering the job market simultaneously. The conversation shifted to discussion of the closing timeline. Vikram explained that all legal documents would be finalized by Monday, with the official transfer of ownership scheduled for Wednesday. The announcement to Dataflow employees would happen on Thursday, after all legal obligations had been completed. What about media coverage? Asked the older man in Hindi. Acquisitions of this size usually attract attention from business journalists. We have prepared a press release that emphasizes the positive aspects of the deal, replied Vikram in Hindi. We will focus on innovation, market expansion, and strategic growth. The job cuts will be presented as necessary restructuring for long-term competitiveness. Maya realized that she was witnessing the planning stages of what would probably become a major business news story. The acquisition would be presented to the public as a positive development, while the human cost would be minimized or explained away as an unfortunate necessity. I think we should review the final contracts one more time, said the lawyer. We want to ensure that every detail is properly documented before we proceed. The 3 men spent the next hour going through legal documents line by line. Maya continued cleaning around the office, occasionally catching fragments of their discussion about warranties, representations, indemnifications, and other legal concepts she recognized from her business law classes. As the evening wore on, Maya found herself thinking more and more about the Dataflow employees who had no idea their company was about to be sold. She imagined them going home to their families, making plans for the weekend, completely unaware that their professional lives were about to be turned upside down. I believe everything is in order, said the lawyer finally. The contracts are ready for signature, and all regulatory filings have been prepared. We can proceed with the closing as scheduled. Excellent, replied Vikram. This acquisition will be a cornerstone of our growth strategy for the next 5 years. Maya finished organizing the last section of the office and began gathering her cleaning supplies. The meeting appeared to be winding down, and she needed to complete her other assignments for the night. As she prepared to leave, she heard Vikram speaking in Hindi again. Remember, absolute secrecy until Thursday's announcement. Maya spent the weekend researching everything she could find about Dataflow Technologies. Using the university's business databases and public financial records, she pieced together a picture of a company that had started with incredible promise but had struggled to find its market niche. Dataflow had been founded 8 years earlier by 3 computer science graduates who had developed revolutionary algorithms for analyzing large data sets. Their initial funding came from technology investors who believed the software could transform how companies processed and understood their data. The problem, Maya discovered, was that Dataflow's founders were brilliant engineers, but inexperienced business people. They had focused on perfecting their technology without developing effective strategies for marketing and sales. As their initial funding ran out, they had been forced to accept increasingly unfavorable investment terms just to stay operational. Maya found several interviews with Dataflow's CEO, Jennifer Walsh, who had been hired 2 years earlier to help turn the company around. In the most recent interview, Walsh expressed optimism about finding a strategic partner who could help Dataflow reach its full market potential. We have created something truly special here, Walsh had said. Our software can identify patterns and insights that human analysts would never find. The right partnership could help us bring this technology to industries that desperately need better data analysis capabilities. Reading those words, Maya felt sick to her stomach. Jennifer Walsh clearly believed she was negotiating a partnership that would preserve jobs and build on Dataflow's innovations. She had no idea that Vikram Mehta saw the acquisition as an opportunity to eliminate most of her workforce and extract maximum value from the company's intellectual property. Maya also discovered that Dataflow employed many people who had been with the company since its early days. These were not just random employees, but dedicated professionals who had helped build something innovative despite the company's financial struggles. Many had taken pay cuts or accepted stock options instead of higher salaries because they believed in Dataflow's mission. On Monday morning, Maya sat in her business ethics class trying to focus on the professor's lecture about corporate social responsibility. The professor discussed case studies about companies that had faced ethical dilemmas regarding stakeholder obligations versus shareholder profits. The challenge, Professor Martinez explained, is that modern corporations have responsibilities to multiple groups: shareholders, employees, customers, and the broader community. When these obligations conflict, executives must make difficult choices about which stakeholders' interests take priority. Maya raised her hand. What happens when a company has access to information that could help people make better decisions about their future, but sharing that information might be legally problematic? Professor Martinez paused thoughtfully. That's an excellent question that touches on several ethical frameworks. From a utilitarian perspective, you would consider which action produces the greatest good for the greatest number of people. From a deontological perspective, you would focus on whether the action itself is morally right, regardless of consequences. But what if both perspectives point in different directions? Maya asked. Then, you have to make a judgment about which ethical framework is most appropriate for the specific situation, replied Professor Martinez. These are the kinds of decisions that test our character and define who we are as moral agents. After class, Maya walked across campus thinking about Professor Martinez's words. She had spent the weekend convincing herself that she had no responsibility to act on the information she had overheard. After all, she had not sought out the knowledge, and getting involved could jeopardize her job and her education. But the more she learned about Dataflow and its employees, the harder it became to maintain that position. These were real people with mortgages, families, and career aspirations. They were about to be blindsided by circumstances completely beyond their control, while she sat on information that could help them prepare. Maya's phone buzzed with a news alert. Meridian Industries stock rises on acquisition rumors. She clicked on the article and read that financial analysts were speculating about potential merger activity based on unusual trading patterns and insider reports of increased legal activity. The article quoted a stock analyst who said, "Vikram Mehta has a proven track record of identifying undervalued acquisition targets. If Meridian is planning another major deal, it could be very positive for shareholders." Maya realized that information about the Dataflow acquisition was already beginning to leak into financial markets, even though the deal had not been officially announced. This meant that some people were clearly profiting from advanced knowledge of the transaction, while others remained completely unaware of what was coming. That evening, Maya found herself standing outside Dataflow's headquarters building. She had taken the subway to their neighborhood after her afternoon classes, telling herself she just wanted to see the company in person. The building was a converted warehouse in a trendy district that had become popular with technology companies. Through the ground floor windows, Maya could see Dataflow's reception area. The company logo was displayed prominently on the wall, along with framed articles about their innovative software and awards for workplace culture. Everything looked normal, professional, and optimistic. As Maya watched, employees began leaving the building for the day. They walked out in small groups, chatting about work projects and evening plans. Some looked young, probably recent college graduates like herself. Others appeared to be experienced professionals who had built careers around Dataflow's mission. Maya followed a group of employees to a nearby coffee shop, where she ordered a latte and sat at a table where she could overhear their conversation. She felt slightly guilty about essentially spying on these people, but she wanted to understand what they were thinking about their company's future. "I'm really excited about the new project Jennifer announced last week," said a young woman who appeared to be a software developer. "If we can get the healthcare analytics module working properly, it could open up huge new markets for us. I heard we might be getting some new investments soon," said an older man who looked like he might be in management. Jennifer seemed really optimistic about our funding situation during the last all-hands meeting. That would be great, replied the young woman. My student loan payments are killing me, but I love working here. The technology we're building is going to change how people understand data. Maya felt her chest tighten as she listened to this conversation. These employees were planning their futures around a company that was about to be dismantled. The young woman was worried about student loans while having no idea that her job would disappear within days. Did you hear that Google is trying to recruit some of our senior developers? Asked another person at the table. Yeah, but I'm not interested, replied the first woman. Why would I want to be a small fish in a huge pond when I can be part of something innovative and meaningful here? Maya finished her coffee and left the shop, feeling more conflicted than ever. She walked back toward the subway station, trying to process the emotional weight of what she had witnessed. These were not abstract statistics or business cases. They were real people whose lives were about to be dramatically affected by decisions made in corporate conference rooms. On Tuesday morning, Maya woke up with a sense of urgency she had not felt before. According to what she had overheard, the acquisition would be officially completed on Wednesday, with the announcement to Dataflow employees scheduled for Thursday. This meant she had less than 48 hours to decide whether to act on the information she possessed. Maya skipped her first class and went instead to the university's Career Counseling Center. She made an appointment with a counselor who specialized in business ethics and workplace issues. I have a hypothetical question, Maya said when she met with the counselor. If someone accidentally learned about a business decision that would negatively affect many people, what would be the appropriate way to handle that information? The counselor, Ms. Chun, studied Maya's face carefully. That's a complex situation that depends on many factors. Can you provide more specific details about this hypothetical scenario? Maya chose her words carefully. Let's say someone overheard confidential information about layoffs that were going to happen, but the affected employees didn't know yet. Would that person have any obligation to warn the employees? There are both legal and ethical dimensions to consider, replied Ms. Chun. From a legal standpoint, the person would need to be careful about how they obtained and used the information. But from an ethical perspective, there's a strong argument that people have a right to know about decisions that will significantly affect their lives. What if warning the employees might interfere with legitimate business processes? Maya asked. That's where the ethical complexity emerges, said Ms. Chun. You have to weigh the potential harm to the employees against the potential disruption to business operations. Most ethical frameworks would suggest that human welfare should take priority over corporate profits. But what if the person who overheard the information could get in serious trouble for sharing it? Maya pressed. Ms. Chun leaned forward. Maya, this doesn't sound entirely hypothetical. Are you dealing with a real situation where you have access to information about impending layoffs? Maya hesitated, then nodded slowly. I can't give you all the details, but yes, I accidentally learned about something that will affect hundreds of people, and they have no idea what's coming. In that case, I would suggest consulting with a lawyer who specializes in employment law and whistleblower protections, said Ms. Chun. There may be legal ways to ensure that employees receive appropriate notice while protecting yourself from retaliation. Maya left the counseling center feeling more determined, but also more frightened. She had essentially confirmed that she was dealing with a real ethical dilemma rather than an academic exercise. The next step would be figuring out how to act responsibly without destroying her own future. That afternoon, Maya used a computer at the public library to research whistleblower laws and anonymous reporting mechanisms. She discovered that there were legal protections for people who reported certain types of corporate misconduct, but the protections were complex and often difficult to enforce. She also found contact information for several nonprofit organizations that helped workers navigate corporate restructuring and job loss. One organization, the Workers' Rights Legal Clinic, had a hotline for people who needed advice about employment law issues. Maya called the hotline from her cell phone, again framing her question as hypothetical. The lawyer she spoke with explained that employees generally had limited rights to advance notice about layoffs, but that companies were required to provide certain disclosures in specific circumstances. The problem, explained the lawyer, is that companies have learned to structure acquisitions and restructuring in ways that minimize their legal obligations. Employees often find themselves with very little recourse when these situations arise. Is there any way for employees to get advance warning about potential layoffs? Maya asked. Sometimes concerned individuals contact us or other advocacy organizations with information that allows us to provide general guidance to affected workers, replied the lawyer. We can't act on specific insider information, but we can help people understand their rights and prepare for various scenarios. Maya hung up the phone feeling slightly more hopeful. There might be ways to help data flow employees without directly violating confidentiality or securities laws. She just needed to figure out how to thread that needle carefully. Wednesday morning arrived with Maya, feeling like she was running out of time. According to the timeline she had overheard, the acquisition would be legally completed sometime during the day, making Thursday's announcement a fait accompli. Maya decided to take a more direct approach. She created an anonymous email account and drafted a message to Jennifer Walsh, Dataflow's CEO. The email was carefully worded to avoid revealing specific details while still conveying useful information. Ms. Walsh, Maya wrote, I am writing to suggest that you and your employees might want to carefully review any acquisition agreements that are currently being finalized. Based on industry patterns, companies in situations similar to Dataflow's often face significant workforce reductions following acquisitions, despite public statements to the contrary. You might want to ensure that your employees are prepared for various scenarios and aware of their legal rights regarding severance and job placement assistance. Maya read the email several times, trying to balance helpfulness with discretion. She deleted any language that might reveal how she had obtained her information, but tried to preserve enough specificity to be useful. Before sending the email, Maya researched Jennifer Walsh's background more thoroughly. She discovered that Walsh had previously worked for a company that had gone through a difficult acquisition, where promises about job security had not been honored. This gave Maya hope that Walsh might take the warning seriously. Maya hit send and immediately felt both relief and anxiety. She had taken action to help people who were about to be blindsided, but she had also inserted herself into a situation with potentially serious consequences. Wednesday afternoon, Maya checked news websites obsessively for any announcements about the Meridian Dataflow deal. She found nothing, which suggested that everything was proceeding according to Vikram's timeline. That evening, Maya worked her regular cleaning shift at Meridian Tower. As she approached Vikram's office, she could see that it was dark and appeared to be unoccupied. She realized that she might never know whether her intervention had made any difference. Thursday morning, Maya woke up early and immediately checked business news websites. At 7:30 a.m., she found what she was looking for. Meridian Industries announces acquisition of Dataflow Technologies. The press release was exactly as Vikram had described it during his planning meetings. The language emphasized innovation, market expansion, and strategic growth opportunities. The job cuts were mentioned only briefly, described as operational efficiencies that will position the combined organization for long-term success. Maya read through the press release several times, noting how skillfully it minimized the human cost of the acquisition while emphasizing benefits to shareholders and customers. The 800 people losing their jobs were reduced to a euphemistic phrase about operational efficiencies. Later that morning, Maya found a follow-up article that included a statement from Jennifer Walsh. While we are disappointed that the acquisition will result in some workforce reductions, we are grateful that Meridian Industries has recognized the value of Dataflow's technology and committed to continuing our innovation mission. Reading between the lines, Maya sensed that Walsh had been caught off guard by the extent of the job cuts, despite having negotiated the acquisition. The careful language suggested that she was trying to maintain professionalism while dealing with circumstances beyond her control. Maya checked her anonymous email account and found a brief response from Walsh. Thank you for your message. We are working with employee advocacy organizations to ensure that all affected team members receive appropriate support and guidance during this transition. The response was professionally worded but suggested that Walsh had indeed taken the warning seriously and was trying to help her employees navigate the situation. Over the following week, Maya followed news coverage of the acquisition and its aftermath. Several articles reported that Dataflow employees had been better prepared for the layoffs than is typical in such situations, having already begun networking and job searching before the official announcement. One article quoted a former data flow software engineer. It was still a shock, but at least we had started preparing for the possibility. Someone had suggested we should understand our rights and have backup plans ready, just in case. Maya felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness reading these reports. She was glad that her intervention might have helped some people prepare for the transition, but she remained troubled by the fundamental unfairness of the situation. The experience had changed Maya's understanding of how business really operated at the highest levels. She had seen how easily hundreds of people's livelihoods could be treated as variables in financial calculations, and how language could be used to obscure rather than illuminate the human impact of corporate decisions. As she continued her studies and her cleaning job, Maya carried with her a new appreciation for the power of information and the responsibility that comes with knowledge. She had learned that sometimes being in the right place at the right time creates obligations that extend far beyond personal interests or convenience. The secret she had stumbled upon had ultimately led her to take action she never would have imagined herself capable of. In doing so, Maya had discovered something important about her own character and values, even as she helped others navigate an uncertain transition in their professional lives. He said. Too many people's futures depend on this deal proceeding smoothly. Maya almost laughed at the irony of that statement. Too many people's futures did indeed depend on this deal, but not in the way Vikram meant. For him, success meant profits and strategic advantage. For the data flow employees, the deal meant uncertainty, job loss, and financial hardship. As Maya pushed her cart toward the office door, she realized that she now knew far more about this acquisition than she had ever intended to learn. She had names, dates, financial projections, and strategic details that could potentially affect stock prices and business decisions. The weight of this knowledge felt heavier than it had before. Maya was no longer just an accidental eavesdropper. She had become an unwitting insider with access to material information about a major corporate transaction. She understood enough about securities law to know that trading on such information would be illegal, but she also wondered if she had any moral obligations regarding what she had learned. As the elevator descended toward the ground floor, Maya stared at her reflection and wondered what kind of person she was becoming. 3 weeks ago, she had been a simple college student working a cleaning job to pay for her education. Now she felt like she was carrying secrets that could change people's lives. The elevator doors opened to reveal the empty lobby, and Maya pushed her cart out into the marble space. The storm outside had intensified, and she could hear thunder echoing through the building. As she prepared to continue her shift on the lower floors, Maya realized that she had reached a crossroads that would define not just her immediate future, but the kind of person she would choose to become. And wondered what she was supposed to do with what she had learned. She was just a college student working a cleaning job to pay for her education. She had no business being involved in corporate secrets and merger discussions. But as the elevator continued its descent toward the ground floor, Maya could not shake the feeling that this information had found its way to her for a reason. She thought about all the business ethics classes she had taken and about the professors who had emphasized the importance of transparency and fairness in corporate dealings. The elevator reached the ground floor with a soft ding, and the doors opened to reveal the marble lobby. Maya pushed her cart out into the spacious area, her mind still racing with questions about what she had overheard and what, if anything, she should do about it. She knew that her shift was far from over, and she still had several more floors to clean before dawn. But as she made her way toward the service elevator that would take her to the next floor, Maya realized that this night had changed something fundamental about her understanding of how business really worked at the highest levels. The weight of the secret she now carried felt enormous, and she had no idea how it would affect the choices she would have to make in the days and weeks ahead.